Welcome to Rings and Things, where we discuss Tolkien adaptations and texts.
We're just two hobbits from the Shire, one bringing the other along on this adventure.
I'm your host, Agnes, and this is my co-host,
Recurring guest star,
JD. Today, we're going to be covering the first 2 episodes of Rings of Power.
Yeah.
So, I have some introductory thoughts that I want to share before we get started.
Okay.
Rings of Power is a much more difficult adaptation for me to comment upon than anything else so far, because it is an unfinished fill-in-the-blanks adaptation. There's supposed to be 5 seasons to Rings of Power. We only have 2 seasons of the show.
Oh.
The show draws on many things from the Silmarillion, and a lot of them are applied in ways that are not from the books, because most of the texts concerning the period in which the show takes place are very broad, historically scaled versions of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And the show is telling a more boots-on-the-ground type of story than the broad historical texts that they're drawing upon.
Definitely, yeah.
So it's got those blanks to fill in. And I think that having a complete work will be able to help my ability to analyze it, create my ability to analyze it, because expectations of things may be subverted by the end of the 5th season.
That makes sense.
There's a lot of pressure in the Tolkien community to pick a side, whether you like Rings of Power or don't like Rings of Power. And there are notable voices against this pressure as well. And my biggest takeaway from everything I've heard is that I don't think I can judge an incomplete work. I need to see complete patterns before I can draw conclusions about what a story is trying to say.
Yeah, and we're not even halfway through.
Exactly. We're only 40% of the way through.
Well, you're only 40% of the way through. I am a fraction of that.
Exactly. But, I can't even confirm or deny to you about things about the story.
Right, yeah.
Because I don't know how it ends.
Yeah, and if you knew how it ends, then it wouldn't be worth watching. The show writers need you to come back and watch season 3.
Yeah, we don't have season 3.
Currently.
Currently.
As of recording, yes.
Hopefully we'll have season 3 eventually. But there's going to be a lot of things that, maybe I'll like it or maybe I'll hate it, depending on what the story does with some things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So on a lot of things, I'm probably just going to want to reserve judgment. But I can make some stabs at whether I'll like or dislike certain aspects, and I can talk about some lore-inspired comments along the way or things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear anything that's inspired by actual Tolkien lore. I know you said it's a bit more sparse since this is not a direct adaptation, but
yeah,
I'm sure there's still a lot infused throughout.
I am incredibly interested in all of your thoughts comparing the quality of Rings of Power to the quality of the New Line Cinema movies.
Okay.
I think you are the ideal person to provide an opinion on Rings of Power. Like I said, there's a lot of controversy in the community regarding the show.
Yeah.
And I think that you are in a unique position. You have a good basis on which to form an informed opinion of the themes that should be present in a Tolkien adaptation, yet you are also not going to get hung up on what has been changed or filled in since you have no clear vision of the lore.
Okay, yeah.
No matter how you try, something's always going to get under your skin simply because it's in the lore that way.
Yeah, or that's not how you pictured it, even if it's not in the lore that way, too.
Exactly.
That's happened to me with other adaptations.
And there's varying degrees of quality that someone can divorce himself from that feeling and still provide objective analysis. But I can even recognize certain instances where I detest a choice made in Rings of Power, and my reason is because it's not in the lore, because they changed the lore. And I just have a hard time seeing the story they're telling for what it's worth. I'll talk about that point when we get there at the end of season 2.
Okay, so a ways away still. The closest thing I have to this in Lord of the Rings that I could point to as an episode that we already recorded is in the Hobbit animated movie when they cut out Bilbo saving them from the trolls. And I'm like, he saved them from the trolls. I couldn't, divorce that. I mean, I feel like that was probably worse than even what you're talking about. But I could not divorce that's what happened before in my head from this is the story they're telling.
Yeah, exactly. And it happens to me. It happens to everyone. Mm-hmm. But since you don't know the lore...
Yes, no, not very much at all.
But you're in this rare position where you don't know the lore, but you know some of the other documents, like On Fairy Stories and Beowulf, The Monsters and the Critics. Mm-hmm. some of these influential texts that teach you about what Tolkien should be without actually telling you the lore are things that usually someone finds out in conjunction with knowing the Silmarillion and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But you have this unique introduction to the world. And so I think you will be able to judge Rings of Power for any quality it does or does not have more clearly than anyone else I know of.
Good. I am honored to be in this position. I'm very excited. I mean, I'm going to try not to get too much in my head about it and just review the show like I did. There is still, I feel like this is the most relevant place to put it, but like there is, even in episode 1 and 2, this is a prequel. We know Sauron's there, right? Like we'll cover it more later, but there's still like things I know just by watching, like Lord of the Rings still happens after this, you know?
Yeah. So you know Sauron's around. You know Sauron isn't gone.
And, you know, I know characters who are in Lord of the Rings aren't going to be dying on screen.
Exactly.
They have plot armor, so don't ever have to worry about that. But other than that, yeah, I think anybody watching this really, like, the only other way that you could get somebody is just have them watch this without anything else in Lord of the Rings and have them not hear about the character. I mean, I guess feasibly you could do that, but and then they wouldn't have, like you said, like that any context.
And I think the show does need a little bit of context, probably.
I would imagine it'd be tricky without it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's doable. That would be another experiment to run.
Yeah, we got to find a different person.
But I think this is the more interesting experience for you to judge the quality of the Tolkien-ness of the adaptation as well.
Yeah, it's like when you're learning to taste wine, you have to learn the vocabulary for it, you know.
And I gave you enough wine to teach you the vocabulary.
Yeah.
And now this is a test.
Although I've never learned to actually taste wine, so I'm assuming you have to learn the vocabulary for it, but I feel like this is a safe assumption.
I think so. I don't know anything about wine tasting. I just know stuff about wine drinking.
Yeah.
Well, I have some broad strokes opinions about Rings of Power for those who want to know where I fall personally. I thought season 1 was mediocre.
Okay.
And I thought season 2 was much better. But when I watched War of the Rohirrim, it kind of made Rings of Power pale in comparison.
War of the Rohirrim was really good, though.
It was so good. And I enjoyed War of the Rohirrim in a way that I have not enjoyed Rings of Power yet. I think part of this might be that I have a certain amount of anticipation of the story is not complete.
Yeah.
I can't rest peacefully with a complete work the way I can rest peacefully with a complete work of War of the Rohirrim.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from that. It's still, when a show is like episodic and has seasons and arcs, you should still be feeling something at the end of, like, say, a season or the start of a season, even if it's not complete.
Well, I mean, like, analyzing the entire
exactly.
show.
There are probably a lot of things in season 1 that won't make sense or are foreshadowing for season 5 that we can't appreciate.
This is a 50-hour movie.
Okay.
Like, that's what this is. It's not a traditional TV show the way TV shows have come to be. As I understand it, they've been contracted for 5 seasons.
Yeah, that's pretty rare in television.
And so they can afford to have a slow first season if they need to set up something later on.
Yeah. Speaking of television production and contracts, I've heard this show, its budget was astronomical, like record-breaking. And I imagine a lot of that just went to special effects because it is very beautiful to look at.
Half of it went to rights.
Oh, wow.
The $500 million budget, $250 million of that, $250 million, went to buy the rights to make the show.
That is insane. Like, to the Tolkien estate, right?
Yes.
Wow. Interesting. I wonder how those negotiations went. I'm
not privy to it.
No, I don't think many people are. That had to be... I just couldn't imagine being the guy... I know the Tolkien estate's like a corporation, almost. It's a group of people, at least.
I think it's his descendants. I think it's J.R.R.'s descendants.
Like, just imagine being able to sit there and say, we need $250 million for these rights. Like, that's got to be unprecedented.
Yeah, it kind of is. So it's a very expensive show, but a lot of that money isn't being seen on screen except the fact that the show exists.
Yeah, and it's, it's Gladriel, not lady who seems suspiciously a lot like Gladriel in all that. The characters, the proper noun names and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't especially like the choice the show has made to have the characters roll their R's in their proper nouns.
I did not notice this, I'm going to say right off the bat. So could you kind of provide an example or say when they would have done it?
Anywhere there's an R. I'm gonna try, but I'm really bad at this, so it's gonna.
You don't actually have to roll the R, but just like what you mean when the elves or the hobbits or everybody? Is it everybody?
Elves especially.
Elves especially. Okay, I'll try to keep an eye out next episode I watch. I won't. I also try not to let it ruin it for me either.
Mm-hmm. I think the Numenorians do it too, but I don't think the hobbits do it. But like Mordor. Or, they pronounce the R's weird. I cannot roll my R's.
Yeah.
Whenever there's an R, they get that rolly R. And this is technically correct. This is technically how the words are supposed to be pronounced with those rolled R's. Mm-hmm. And I don't like the choice that the show made to be technically correct about this. I think it sounds absolutely pretentious.
Yeah. I didn't know it was technically correct, but I kind of liked I liked it a little.
But it's technically correct. But I don't like it. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't something I hardly noticed, but I do like a little bit of a weird speech pattern in general. So
it just grates on me.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't pick it up too badly.
I'm sorry if you do. What else did you notice?
I knew that even before watching this a bit that this was a discussion point. I avoided it like the plague. But I was very happy to see people with different skin colors, not to be like SJW or anything, but it was definitely been commented on in the Peter Jackson films for a long time now, and I'm glad that I feel like they did a pretty good job of just picking some roles to be, picking appropriate actors who happen to be people of color as well.
Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with any of the casting.
Yeah, I think they did pretty well with it. I did look up after the fact a bit more, trying to research another point about the in-universe racial power dynamics here between the elves and Numenorians, and all I could find was very rancid discussion about this topic. So I almost hesitated to put it in here, but it is a cesspool, and I did not want to go back in that.
Yeah, I try to stay off the internet as much as possible, in case y'all didn't realize that from episode 12.
Yeah.
But I've heard about the situations in the community, and I just want to say people with the worst opinions are often the loudest. We already know how I feel about judging reality by what we see on the internet. Mm-hmm. So I know these people exist. I'm not saying they don't.
Oh, yeah.
But I have never met one in real life.
I don't think it's encompassing of even 20% of the fans of Tolkien or the fans of Tolkien who watch Ring of Power. It's just the discussion, they talk so much, it's 50-50. It's how... I don't get it. I don't get why it's something that people are so upset about either way. There's a lot to say about why the people who are upset about it are wrong, but I don't feel like doing that on this podcast very much at all.
Yeah.
Not to... I guess I just laid my flag down pretty hardly, but...
It's a fair flag.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm not even going to defend it. It can stand on its own.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to talk about it anymore. So Rings of Power got the memo that it needed a prologue. Mm-hmm. The intro sequence to the second episode being done with sound waves was also cool. And I wanted to mention that the show put a lot of emphasis on doing practical effects.
Which, again, you can tell. You can tell looking at it. I feel like and I said this before way back in episode 2, maybe. But practical effects, bolstered by some computer graphics, CGI, is just the way to go. Because, if you had to pick one, go with practical, obviously, because it lasts, it ages well when you do that.
And Rings of Power seems to be doing that, I think, as a show.
Yeah, it hasn't been around so long as we're recording, but I could see coming back in 10, 15 years and be like, wow, why didn't everything from 2025 look like this?
Yeah. In the
intro prologue, they say nothing is evil in the beginning. I feel like that was starting off with a hot take, personally. My understanding between Tolkien's morality is that, evil is inherent in evil things, if that makes sense.
And I'm so glad that we can talk about this, because that is actually not the idea behind Tolkien's morality, and I'm really glad that we're getting a chance to talk about it.
Okay.
Evil is absolutely evil in Tolkien's morality, but existence is definitionally a good thing. So evil cannot exist. Evil is instead the absence of good. So this quote is actually something Elrond says at his council in the books. He says, "Nothing is evil in the beginning, even Sauron was not so. Entities with moral agency choose to be evil. They aren't inherently evil. Someone like Saruman becomes evil over time as his ends begin to justify his means, like defeating Sauron by industrialization."
Right, but the thing that I was thinking of, even more than Sauron as an inherent evil, was the ring. The ring can't help but bend even good things to evil.
It corrupts, yes.
I guess maybe...
But the ring is an object. The ring doesn't have moral agency.
Yeah, that's true. Sauron's the one who is, I guess, determining... The reason the ring's always evil is because it always works for Sauron, who is choosing to be evil. Is that the...
I mean, in some sense, the ring is Sauron. Sauron has poured himself into the ring, in some sense. And so it is Sauron's power, and it is made in such a way to be corrupting to all who have it.
Yeah.
In the sense that the ring exists, and existence is good, it has that quality of goodness about it. But that might be its only quality of goodness.
And then also the entire, the only thing you could do with it that isn't going either evil or going to be bent to evil is destroying it and making it unexist.
Yes.
I feel like maybe the ring is some sort of loophole or morality black hole, but I don't know. That's the biggest thing. It's the Lord of the Rings. The whole thing is about the One Ring. Yeah. And it feels like an inherently evil object to me. I get what you're saying, that it's technically not inherently evil. It's Sauron that's the evil in it, and Sauron's even not inherently evil. I could get behind that, and I do follow the kind of philosophical, logical flow tree, though. I think I got a better grasp on it, at least.
Yeah. Anyway, with the ring, I think it comes down to the idea that the ring does not have moral agency.
Okay, got it.
Things that have moral agency are not going to be evil in the beginning. Iluvatar doesn't create evil beings. He creates beings... He creates free beings who choose to be evil.
Okay, got it. That's pretty fundamentally Catholic.
Yes.
I am super excited to get to the very beginning of things, though. I absolutely... I feel like every story needs to do this, and I never once felt like they dragged on too long starting at the very beginning. It's always really refreshing to see, this is the beginning, the Adam and Eve of Lord of the Rings, or... other words, too.
You haven't seen the creation story yet.
No, it's not the creation story, but I feel like this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're doing that metaphor, this is still the Garden of Eden, the prologue of the show. I may be wrong on that, but
Valinor could be paralleled to the Garden of Eden, but Melkor is already in the world messing up Middle-earth.
Okay.
So, the Garden of Eden, there's only half of it that's good.
So, but either way, this very early cosmology is good, and it reminds me a lot of when The Legend of Korra, they went back to explain Avatar 1, stuff like that. Just super proto history of a world is just always great. Yeah. Love to see it.
I thought the prologue bits were done very well.
Yeah, and I mean, since the Fellowship and we saw Isildur's story, I want to know what was happening before then. And I made this note before I even saw the rest of the show. The rest of the show takes place long after this prologue, and it's still before Isildur. So I don't know. Just expanding the timelines always, on such a grand scale especially, is always exciting for me. Yeah. So the discussion between Finrod, I had to go back because I kept calling him Galadriel's brother.
Finrod is Galadriel's brother.
Finrod, yes. I liked it. It reminds I forget, I didn't write down the exact quote, but the saying that it kept reminding me of that I've heard elsewhere is an entire sea of water can't sink a ship unless the water gets inside the ship. Similarly, negativity of the world can't put you down unless you let it get inside of you. But they kind of took it a different way with the metaphor.
The metaphor being the rock floating and the rock sinking and the boat floating.
Yeah, the boat floats because it's looking up. Was that how it was? Something
like that. And the rock sinks because it looks down. And What did you think of that?
I don't know if that's how... I said it's interesting and good description of buoyancy, but the more I think about it, I'm not sure if that's how buoyancy works or not.
No,
I don't think that's how buoyancy works.
No. No, it's not.
It's interesting still if you don't know how it works. I did like also, I didn't really catch what the secret was, but she gets a secret and she says, it can't be that simple. He says, the most important truths often are. This is very interesting to me because I remember very early, like learning about philosophy is like thinking about what truth even is was one of my first adventures in this. And I was like way too young to be worrying about all this. It very fundamentally affected me as a person, I feel like. And I still don't have an answer, so don't ask.
I made similar journeys. Well, I have some opinions about Finrod's speech about the stone and the ship and light and darkness.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, and I may not make this disclaimer every time I have something to say, but keep in mind that this is an incomplete show. I reserve the right to modify my opinions should further evidence show up in the show that modifies something, but at least at this point, Finrod's speech is so dumb.
It started off good, I gotta say. I liked it.
It's not how buoyancy works. I didn't especially like it because of the imagery. And the even worse part, though, was the idea that you have to touch the darkness to tell right from wrong. Seems pretty antithetical to the themes that Tolkien puts in his works. Although
it does fit with my themes in the algorithm that we just talked about.
And that's actually... Okay, I wasn't going to talk about this here, but you brought it up. You
I did. Okay.
So...
I went there.
One of the reasons I like Rings of Power, in as much as I do like it, is that I find the dialogue to be extremely provocative when thinking about the Unholy Trinity. There's many things I find faulty in the show, but especially season 2 came really strong with this, and I really like the game that I'm seeing play out about the Unholy Trinity represented in the rings and things like that.
I have to be way too early for this, right? I don't see anything that could even be applied at all in the first 2 episodes.
It's mostly in season 2.
Okay, good. I'm like this. If this just flew over my head because I did not once think about anything like that. Although
it starts a little bit at the end of season 1, but it really ramps up season 2. Like I said, season 1 was pretty mediocre in my opinion.
Because it didn't.
Well, I didn't know where it was going, but. Yeah. I don't know if this is what's intended in the show. I don't really care if this is what's intended in the show. This is what I'm seeing in the show.
Okay, yeah.
And I think there's quality in the story that's being told about the algorithm and everything if you apply the dialogue in season 2 to that. But to reel this back in, Finrod does talk about touching the darkness to tell right from wrong. And... I'll have to go process your generous take now. I did think the part about the most important truths being simple did ring very true. That part of it I did like.
Yeah, it was good.
But I don't know that there's anything simple about sometimes we cannot know until we have touched the darkness.
Yeah. Is that what he said? Is that revealed to us? I thought it was
I think that's what he said, yeah.
Like, I have closed captioning on, and I think it just said whispers. I don't know.
Maybe that was from a future episode. But
it's revealed eventually?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a very mild spoiler, but I'll take it. But that is what he says?
Yeah, I don't think there's much
Maybe
lost.
You can hear it if you listen, too. Like, I didn't go back and try to listen, either. So, I'm not gonna...
I don't remember.
Hang my hat on this point. But I don't
think there's anything lost by... knowing what he said.
Yeah, I feel like that's like what it was is we didn't know what was so simple. But if that is the answer, that isn't. I agree with. Oh, go on. I agree with your point though. If that is what he said.
Yeah, it is what he said. It's just where did he say it? And if it is withheld until a later episode, like I said, I don't especially feel that there was much payoff for that.
Because it's such a bad line.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we cannot know until we have touched the darkness.
Oh, no.
It doesn't seem particularly true. My most generous take on this is a line from Gandalf where he says, the burned hand teaches best. After that, advice about fire goes to the heart. But touching fire isn't so much evil as it is self-destructive. I mean, evil is self-destructive, but you can touch fire without wanting to self-destruct.
And even fire isn't evil either.
Yeah. Fire is complicated, but yeah, fire is not ubiquitously evil.
No.
My least generous take on this is when Éomer asks Aragorn, "How shall a man judge what to do in such times?" And Aragorn responds, "As he ever has judged, good and ill have not changed since yesteryear, nor are they one thing among elves and dwarves and another among men. It is a man's part to discern them." Nothing about having to touch darkness to figure out what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to step off my little soapbox now.
Okay. Still, as the whole, even discussing like the nitty-gritty of the dialogue, I still liked this scene, this sequence, even if the dialogue is questionable.
Yeah, there was a lot going for it as well.
Oh, and I forgot I even made this note, but the description of the early world by Galadriel is reminiscent of Abrahamic Garden of Eden. I've noted while I was watching it. How much of this description, when she's talking about the early world before, when the elves were living, where are they living?
Valinor.
When the elves are living in Valinor, her description reminds me very much of the Garden of Eden. And so I think we touched on it a bit, but was there anything else that this is, like, how much is this based off Tolkien's adaptation, Valinor?
I would say it's substantially very true and worded very Rings of Power-y. Like, okay. It's not Tolkien's words, but I think they did a pretty good job describing the place overall. And
then you said there was some metaphysical problems with that parallel I drew anyway, because it's not like...
I mean, Valinor is set apart, and evil does enter it. You know, Melkor comes in and destroys the trees. So you can draw some broad parallels, but you can also draw very broad anti-parallels.
Yeah.
And I guess this comes into the difference between literary observation and literary analysis.
And which one am I doing?
Simple observation would be just literary observation.
Okay, so yeah.
But if you take this observation to the next level and then learn something new in either text, either in, or in this case, a show, you know, if you learn something new about Galadriel because you compared it to her being in the Garden of Eden, that would propel this into being literary analysis.
Okay, so I think a point I have later on kind of takes this and goes into analysis a bit, but we'll touch on it when it comes up.
Yep. So right now we've laid the groundwork with some observation, because literary observation is not bad.
Yeah.
It's just not sufficient.
Actually, it's my next point. I didn't see that. So the elves, the way the prologue, the narration for the prologue, made it seem as like the elves, when Morgoth attacked, the elves knew to go to war, and I felt like, you know, how were they, if everything was like so pure back then, how do they know to fight? How do they have arms and armor?
I love this insight. There's a good answer for this.
I got this from the analysis by comparing it to Garden of Eden. As like, Garden of Eden, they wouldn't have known how to fight,
and
etc.
That's exactly what I mean by an observation leading to analysis. So the observation about Garden of Eden doesn't mean much until it propels you into this thought, which is absolutely so insightful. In the books, Morgoth, previously named Melkor, was living among the elves, sowing seeds of disruption, teaching them about weapons and violence, and then he pulls off his jewel heist, commits a murder, and he and his girlfriend head out.
Oh, wow. It starts with a jewel heist? That's like,
This might be the worst summary of the Silmarillion ever.
Okay. Yeah, a jewel heist just is such an interesting thing to have, like, as the fallen grace, like the first evil thing he does, you know?
No, it's not the first evil thing he does.
Oh, it's not. It's the evil thing he does that kind of kicks off everything else, though?
It does kick off a bunch of stuff, yeah. And that's kind of what Rings of Power is, telling a version of the story.
Well, it kind of, so it glazes past everything for quite a while, and the prologue just basically says the elves basically won.
Yeah. But the elves learned how to fight from Morgoth in the book.
Okay, that is a pretty juicy fact. I like to hear that.
Yep.
I'm glad that the question has an answer too. It's not just a plot hole. I was worried I found something I was like, huh.
Morgoth trained his own enemies.
Yeah. I'm sure, you know, that's easily, first of all, an example of evil undoing itself, but I feel like he, maybe he wanted somebody to fight so bad that not only that he trained them to fight, but gave them a reason to.
Well, let's put a pin in it and find out when we read the Silmarillion.
Maybe he was just lonely.
There were better solutions to that problem.
Yeah.
But actually, yes.
Oh, really?
I mean,
oh, no.
Community is a big theme in Tolkien's works. Friendship and community was this year's Tolkien Reading Day theme. Isolation is the opposite of that, and Melkor tended to isolate himself.
Yeah, but maybe teaching a Gentile people how to kill is not a good way to community build.
No.
And so, like I mentioned, they do wrap up this whole conflict quicker than I'd like. Like, I kind of want a Rings of Power prequel now. Near the end of the prologue, they said it would be over quickly, but the war left Middle-earth in ruin. And, like, this was, like, this bog-standard prototypical World War I commentary for, like, the last 100 years. I just thought I'd say that. They thought that the Great War would be over by Christmas, right? Like, that, and it lasted, like, oh, goodness. Was it 5 years? Something like that.
A long time. Not over by Christmas.
Not over by Christmas. And it left a lot of places in ruin.
Yeah.
And that was, the prologue wraps up, and that's where the storyline picks up.
Yep. And I have our episode at this point divided up by storyline.
Okay.
So we're going to go through and talk about episode 1 and 2, Galadriel's storyline and the Lindon storyline first. And then we're going to go back and talk about episode 1 and 2 with the Harfoot storyline. And
I like that because I get so bad about cutting back and forth.
Exactly. So we have minimal cuts this way, and we're just going to talk about both episodes together.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Otherwise, why watch them together?
So first up, we have the Galadriel story, which I'm going to call the Lindon storyline for a while.
Okay, can I have up top why it's called the Lindon storyline? Because I'm drawing a blank on that.
Lindon is where that tree is, where Gil-galad and everybody are being fancy.
That's the setting.
Yeah, that's the... It's not a city, but that's the place they're in.
Okay, so it starts with Galadriel, and like it's showing her being determined to find Sauron. And we know Sauron's there, right? This is part of it being a prequel, but the way that the dialogue's going, the back and forth, the music, everything that is being cut, like I feel like she is being overzealous. It's more of a feeling based thing. Like almost like bordering on hubris.
I wouldn't say bordering, but yeah.
She's definitely in hubris land. Okay. I'm a Galadriel fanboy, I think. So, so far at least. Mm-hmm. Everything I've seen of her, I'm absolutely in love with. I don't know how far this will carry in the show or not. We'll see. Actually, I've already seen some things that I'm like, okay. But at this point, I still was like all gung-ho Galadriel, but I don't know. Like, I don't understand. If we know Sauron's there, why have Galadriel seem like she's out of line searching for him so fervently?
Well, the elves think that he has been defeated.
Mm-hmm.
We just know that he hasn't because we know that he comes back. We know that Galadriel is right. But
right.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, like, if I were contemporary to Galadriel, I'd be like, you are out of line. Like, this is, even if you're right, which there's no way to tell, like, this is too much on a maybe. Like, I definitely get where her companions are and saying, like, we are going home. I get that that's not the right thing to do. They're breaking their oath, really. But, like, what do you do if the person you're oath to is, like, bad or not putting your safety into consideration, you know?
I don't know precisely where their oaths lie. They also said that she was going against the High King's orders.
Oh, okay.
So are they pledged to her or are they pledged to the High King? It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And
either way, I did feel kind of like the elves turning on her like that was like, it felt like, oh, that's not good on either end. Like, it felt like both parties were kind of like, I don't know. It was like dissonant for me in a good way though. Like it created tension, and I like this because it's a prequel. It used the prequel well, I feel here, because we know Galadriel's right, but it made me feel like she was wrong, even though I knew she was right. And it created like some tension in me watching it, which was good. I liked it.
Well, I agree that Galadriel is not at her most likable here. And my generous take is that remember that we have an age between this Galadriel and the wise, ethereal, elven queen we meet in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
So she has a few thousand years to work out her personality quirks.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I totally got that. And it's so, I do like that a lot. I thought the casting was great too.
Yeah.
Like Galadriel and Elrond, I think look a lot like younger versions of their Peter Jackson film versions.
And the actors are very skilled.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, they're good at acting too. Yes. I didn't think in the first scene with Elrond the way that he got excited for Galadriel. I get like it definitely felt like Elrond had a thing for Galadriel, but I didn't pick that up further in the episode. But in that specific scene, I felt some chemistry. I
was very interested in this, and people who have seen further in Rings of Power will understand why I'm very interested in this. But Elrond and Galadriel have no romantic chemistry in the books. Elrond actually marries Galadriel's daughter in the books. And I was very interested in precisely what made you think that he had a thing for her.
Yeah.
I interpreted all of their scenes as being platonic. It could well be that there's romantic cues in the show that I don't pick up on. I do that regularly, just like not picking up on Christian imagery. I don't pick up on romantic imagery very well.
Yeah, I also struggle with it sometimes too.
Yeah.
With romantic specifically. Like, I think also a lot of time romantic subplots take a lot away. It ruined, I don't know why I keep going back. I haven't watched Korra in so long, but the first season of Korra was almost ruined by romantic subplots, I felt like.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of platonic affection.
Yeah.
So was there anything specific that gave you the romantic vibes?
I can't I think it was mostly the way the actor was conveying that Elrond was excited Galadriel would be back. It seemed a little bit above like platonic to me. The rest of their interactions, it felt like at most Elrond had a crush. I did not feel anything back though. It did not feel reciprocal. Like Galadriel, I didn't feel like had an inkling of feelings towards Elrond whatsoever.
Okay.
But that, and I don't know, like the rest of it wasn't very strong. I think it was without that one scene where he was riding in a tree and they told, hey, Galadriel's coming. I think if that scene was just cut, I wouldn't have picked up on it at all if it's there in other scenes at all. Okay.
Well, if you ever see any romantic chemistry that is not blatantly obvious, then I'm interested in what you see where.
Right. Okay. I don't think I've noticed. I'm going to say in the first 2 episodes, I don't think I noticed anything else at all.
Okay.
That was it. That was the one thing that I noticed.
So Elrond was sitting in a tree for that scene, though.
Yeah.
When he was sitting in that tree, he was writing the king's speech.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize that that's anything to do with Elrond. I don't remember him having any perchance for writing at all in the films or Lord of the Ring films or the Hobbit films, anything like that.
Well, Rivendell has a vast library, and Elrond is very knowledgeable and scholarly.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, doesn't necessarily mean he's a speechwriter.
Yeah, no, I love reading and I hate writing. I respect people who like writing, but I wouldn't have anything to read otherwise. But I can't stand doing it myself for very long. But yeah, I thought it was a nice detail. Is this also, while we're on it, anything in the Silmarillion or?
Elrond is the next one in line for the High Kingship. And he is apprenticed to Gil-galad. You know, like, I mean, I'm air quotes around apprenticed. It's not an apprenticeship, but like Gil-galad's his mentor.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
Not a lot is known.
It stuck with me. He was, and I didn't even like. I saw he was writing in the tree. I thought that was just leisurely when he was mouthing the king's speech. I feel like this is just a nice character detail that makes him like. It rounds the character. It gives him something that he's interested in. I don't know. I liked it quite a bit. Yeah. So in this scene, they ceremoniously send Galadriel off, and I feel like just before they had her asking for more resources to find Sauron. And I think this is an example of the king using like pomp and circumstance to reject her in a way that she couldn't argue. I don't know if this was actually like an obvious point, like that's a reference later in the plot, but I noticed it like right away.
Yeah, I don't feel like this is something that gets referenced a lot. I mean, this motivates everything that comes after, but yeah, I feel like it's not something that people talk about.
Yeah. And so she is on the fence at this point. She's talking with Elrond about she doesn't like that. She wants to refuse the call of Valinor, right? Is the way I put it. I swear I remember some takes that Valinor was a metaphor for heaven.
I wouldn't characterize it that way, but there is a lot of that characterization that happens.
Yeah. And especially the way that I feel like these elves are talking about, I could see it. But like, if we're talking about spiritually, this reminds me of like Buddhist philosophy, about achieving nirvana and, how suffering is like seductive and you are drawn to it. It's a concept called samsara.
Okay.
And she's unable to go be at peace because of this suffering and turbulence inside of her, drawing her out into the world. And that's exactly what like Buddhists like think they should avoid. And I thought that was kind of interesting too. And it was a little bit of mixing of metaphors, but I feel like, I don't know. We don't subscribe to the author having importance here, but I do wonder if they did that on purpose or not, or if I just picked up on it out of nowhere.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But
and then I did ask you and you answered here. But at the end of the Return of the King, they imply that Valinor would heal all of this tension and trauma inside of her, right? This mental disturbance.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Valinor is exactly the place where Galadriel would find healing for her wounds. Mm-hmm. So she needs to go to Valinor and is refusing the exact treatment for the reason that she needs treatment.
Yeah, it's like,
I'm not going to go to the doctor because I'm sick.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't. I'm too sick to go to the doctor. It's like, that's like a Greek curse.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no. I am obvious that Galadriel ultimately decided on leaving. Like, she seemed very intent on not. And I in the moment knew, like, obviously she doesn't go to Valinor. This is a prequel.
Yeah.
This High King, at this point, he was like talking about some power plays with Elrond after sending Galadriel off and politics. I don't remember specifically the dialogue that set me off, but he seems questionable, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's currently or later corrupted. He just like stinks of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who don't like this Gil-galad. He's a good guy in the books, but there's very, very little information on him. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what story this show is telling. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to call out that I really liked their singing to get into Valinor. It felt very fitting.
Yeah.
To have to sing to work your magic to get into the Holy Land of the Elves.
Yeah, it was almost like, to me, it looked like what was powering the boat a little bit.
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Loved everything about that. The next thing I didn't love so much.
Yeah, I was surprised that Galadriel jumped out of the... I even said Galadriel swims back as it happened. I was like, she's gonna Michael Phelps her way back to Middle Earth.
Galadriel jumping into the water is incredibly stupid. She can't swim the breadth of the Sundering Seas. The elves could have all swam to Middle Earth if you could do that. They wouldn't have needed boats to go over to fight Morgoth. They could have all just swum.
Yeah.
But no, she's going to pull off swimming to Middle Earth somehow. It's active suicide.
Yeah.
And I can't see how she'd do it unless she runs into a little raft in the middle of the ocean.
I don't know. Almost that point almost has me thinking, especially with our discussion about like how unsettled would she rather be dead than at peace? Like, was that what they're going for? Is that...
Well, she knows what happens when she dies. Her body and soul get separated, and her soul goes to what's called the Halls of Mandos. Mm-hmm. It's a place where disembodied elves go.
And you still have all of your current memories and feelings, so it wouldn't help? Basically.
And you're in even more torment because naturally you want to have a body, and you don't have a body yet. Uh-huh. And it takes you time and a growth period to maybe get your body back.
Okay. Yeah. So that doesn't seem like what would happen. Like, that doesn't seem like it was actually active suicide. Like,
now, is that the afterlife that Rings of Power has for elves? I don't know what story they might want to tell, but that's what it is in the books.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's not touched on, obviously. So, but I guess we'll have to run on that assumption. So that also doesn't make sense. I think maybe the showrunners will really think she was just determined to get back. It's hard to tell which. I don't know.
I don't know.
I think maybe my most generous take then after this discussion is they're really trying to show how, like, she is willing, how dedicated to the point of being self-destructive she is to finding Sauron. And that's shown in the first scene too.
And I think that's probably what is going on here, but I think it's poorly executed because this is absolutely not believable.
No,
So,
it's not.
I will say that this is one of my big complaints about the show.
Yeah.
Like, this is a low point for me.
Yeah, now that we ruled off, like, actually a suicide attempt, it's just confusing.
Yeah.
Why she would be trying to swim off a ship back home.
Like, I want to say this is in the top 3 points of things I don't like about Rings of Power.
Oh, okay. If this is in your top 3, I think I can handle it, I think.
Okay.
Maybe. Of course, we could have completely different top 3s.
We usually do ranking movies.
Yeah. We usually meet in the middle, though,
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to throw it out there that this is one of my biggest problems with the show is Galadriel swimming back to Middle-earth.
I do. So, do you want? You didn't get to that point, third point yet. Do you want to read that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a good thing Galadriel does find this raft in the middle of the ocean.
Yes.
Or she'd be drowning somewhere along the way, probably.
Definitely.
But finding this raft has to be catastrophic. She's in the middle of a giant ocean, and she finds a raft.
A raft with a bunch of ragtag survivors.
Yeah. It's chance. And when we call it chance, it means it's not.
Right, yeah.
So this casts her meeting of Halbrand as something Providence intervened for. Halbrand even comments that the tides of fate are flowing.
Right.
I want you to remember this.
Okay.
I want you to remember that Halbrand and Galadriel had this chance meeting where Providence intervened to make them meet.
Okay. Yeah.
This is something that is important to what we already see in the rest of the story. Keep this in mind as integral character traits for these guys.
Now,
because like we've talked about chance and stuff like that, about this theme.
Yeah, and even though I know this theme, that didn't cross my mind once this came along, and it just felt like convenient and a contrived plot device. But once you mentioned, eucatastrophe, and chance, and probably could mention Iluvatar's hand, right?
Yep.
I think it makes this plot point a lot stronger and feels a lot more in theme with Tolkien's stuff. It's still questionable why she was in the ocean in the first place, but that's beside the point.
That was the next thing I was going to bring up was the difference between a traditional eucatastrophe and this eucatastrophe is that traditional eucatastrophe, you're in a situation at some level beyond your own power. You have wolves and orcs driving you up trees. You might be on an adventure and you might have fallen into their realm and run away or something. But, ultimately there are forces working against you that you do not control.
Or if it is in your power, it's because you had to do it, like taking the ring, like it was something you were obligated to do.
Yeah. Even making a good choice or something like that. Yeah.
But just a poorly thought out jumping into the...
I don't know how I feel about Iluvatar intervening to save someone from her own stupidity.
Yeah.
And, maybe I got to see the whole show before I fully decide on this.
I'm going to call it temporary madness for Galadriel. That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Like I said, I got a lot of problems right here. Like this part of the show is problematic to me.
I mean, once she gets on the raft, there are some... I like the group of survivors. I so far find Halbrand is a slightly interesting character. He hasn't done much yet. I like the part here that the worm that looked like a shit but it looked like a ship coming through the clouds, and it was a worm with like wreckage on its back of some sort.
Yeah.
Some sort of sea snake. That was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they were during all of this ruckus, Galadriel said to Halbrand, I called him the raft guy. She said, "Bind yourself to me," and it feels like foreshadowing too. This might be romantic tension, also possibly.
Okay.
But I don't feel like they actually feel that. I just feel like the writers feel it, if that makes sense.
Interesting. I like that take.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I don't feel like the characters feel romantic tension here, but I feel like the writers are planting the seed there.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll follow up on that later. So, this brings us to the next storyline, the Harfoots.
Yeah, it shows them kind of hiding from two like stray hunters, were they?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and I didn't pick up. I was unsure even if they were supposed to be hobbits at first for a minute.
Yeah, these are like proto-hobbits, pre-Shire hobbits. They don't have that hobbit name yet, but they are the ancestors of those who will become the people we know as hobbits.
I thought it was interesting that their name was Harfoot. I felt like maybe it was hair, like something to do with rabbits hiding, foraging, maybe.
I think it has more to do with the hair on their feet than the hair of a rabbit.
Yeah, that's possible too. That's a good pun either way.
Yeah. Harfoot is the name of one of the 3 ancestral families of hobbits, the Harfoots, the Stoors, and the Falahides. And I don't really have a source for the hairy feet etymology. It's just my impression of it.
It makes a lot more sense, especially like if you're reading it and you don't see... I was watching it, so I was seeing them hide in a bunch of hills. Where if you're reading it on a page and they're just mentioned next to Hobbit, you see Harfoot. I could totally see how the 2 different folk etymologies that we concocted came from our exposure to the name. Mm-hmm. I feel like yours probably is closer to what most people would understand, though, I would guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm exactly the kind of person who wants to see hobbits in my Second Age adaptation. Yes. I don't know that I always love this storyline, but I love the principle that there are hobbits in it. I need hobbits in my story.
Yeah, I, so far in these first 2 episodes, quite liked all the scenes with the hobbits. Nori and Poppy were great. I really, really love Nori. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of fun quirks. They say, mind your own cartwheels. A Harfoot without manners is likely to get as far as a square cartwheel, I think they said. Have you lost your cartwheels? Like, it comes to be like you can expect them to almost say something about that if they're going to use an idiom. It's about carts or cartwheels. It's very funny to me. I do like mind your own cartwheels because we say mind your own beeswax, and both of like bees and wagons are 2 things we know have like the culture that spread the Proto-Indo-European language. Both had words for it, so we know that they were from somewhere where they had wagons and bees. Like that's one of the most common ones throughout. Yeah. I don't know if that was on purpose at all, but I thought it was a fun connection.
It definitely was a fun observation. I enjoyed that. Probably the best defense I've heard of the Harfoot's far too many sayings, metaphors, and euphemisms. This is probably one of the biggest things that I hate about this storyline is it does not work for me.
They're very cart-focused society. I respect it.
It overshadows the dialogue. It's trying too hard.
I can see what you mean. It feels a little like hammered in for sure. Like it doesn't feel like natural turns of phrase at all. Yeah. Like they should at least, instead of saying cartwheels, come up with like are your spokes bent or something? Well, they wouldn't have metal spokes, but you know,
like I mean, you can have wooden spokes.
Something that's still cart related that isn't the word cart or wheel. Like, yeah, at least.
Yeah. So it doesn't work for me. It feels like nails on a chalkboard sometimes.
Yeah, it hasn't gotten to me too badly yet. I still think it's fun.
Good. I'm glad it's pleasant for you.
There's a lot going on with them establishing kind of their society, how they live. You get to hear they get the chances to bring up a cartwheel every scene, but it doesn't feel like anything's really happening there, except showing that they're like a hiding, foraging, nomadic society until Nori I put it as she saves a guy from a village.
Yes, he's the
fell
stranger.
from the sky. Did he fall from the sky? It looked like he fell from the... He was in a crater.
Yeah, he came from the meteor.
Okay. Poppy's saying that they were arguing back and forth. Nori felt obligated to save him or pick him up. And Poppy said she is looking for adventure and not really truly being altruistic in a way, she was kind of saying. And even if she was, it's at the cost of a lot of other people's safety. I thought it was a very juicy argument with good dialogue. I liked it.
Yeah, I do like this conflict. The stranger's placement with Nori and Poppy is credited as Iluvatar's intervention since it was attributed to chance. I would call all moments when Iluvatar can be seen to intervene as eucatastrophic.
Yeah.
So, like, it might be building up to something, later on, but he's had to place Nori and Poppy here at this time to help the stranger. It's all chance. It's all going to build to something that's going to make something work out. At least that would be what a good Tolkien story would have follow from this.
Yeah.
We still have a bunch of story that we don't know what's going to happen.
True. And also sometimes, like, everything works out and is good. Like, it's still to chance that Bilbo found the ring and everything worked out and was for the better compared to if he didn't.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
It wasn't personally better for Bilbo and Frodo. I still stand by.
Absolutely.
Like, they still had a lot of suffering to deal with because of it.
Yeah, this doesn't have to be personally beneficial to Poppy or Nori, but the fact that this is happening should cause things to work out in the end somehow.
Yeah, and I do see a very, I feel like it might have been on purpose, like parallel between Nori and Frodo and Poppy and Sam. I feel like the writers did this like because we're like, people love Frodo and Sam. We need something to be like Frodo and Sam.
Yeah, there's the Hobbit protagonist and the sidekick.
And they have similar kind of temperaments and okay, maybe not. Maybe this is more Poppy and Sam. Like, maybe not Nori and Frodo as much, but
yeah,
I definitely see a lot of Sam-esque qualities in Poppy.
I do as well.
And it still goes a little bit with maybe Nori would be like Frodo if Frodo didn't get cursed with a object that stains your soul.
Well, Frodo and Sam have a very definite master and servant relationship in the books, and Poppy and Nori definitely don't have that. They're equals. Yeah,
that's true. It's very played back in the Peter Jackson movies, but Sam being under Frodo's employ.
Yep.
Yeah. The whole scene where the stranger wakes up personally reminded me so much of, I don't know if you've seen this movie or not, but The Iron Giant is one of my favorite movies from when I was a kid.
I think I've seen that. In
the scene where he is trying to teach the giant to communicate and where they're trying to communicate with him just reminded me so much of it. Like an alien, so to speak, from space fell from the sky. And they're trying to figure out, is this thing dangerous? But also, can this thing even be communicated with? And, there's some like fun, like trying to go back and forth to figure out just basic words. I like it. I don't know. I'm sure that's been done 100 times, but that's the first thing it drew me to. Acting without having any dialogue is such a challenge, and this actor does it so well. Also, the stranger is writing something, and Nori doesn't understand it. I didn't know if it's because it's just not the right language, or if the Harfoots don't have a language, or if Nori just can't read, or what it is with that. Well, Sadok has a book with some sort of writing in it, so not everyone is completely illiterate. I don't get the impression that literacy is crucial in their society, though. I think like Sadok might be like one of the only people who knows it, maybe a couple others. Okay, I remember Sadok had his book. Was he actually reading stories from it? Could it possibly be, maybe they have like only numbers? I don't know. I'm getting way too much into the... I think he eventually reads words from it, yeah. He reads words from it, okay. And even in the Shire, only the gentry are lettered, generally. Yeah. Yeah, no, like, it wasn't a diss on Nori. Like, she doesn't seem to have the need to read in the society she lives in at all. If you're foraging and... kind of living in the shadows, the last thing you need to worry about is going to learn how to read. Yeah. And also, that's like assuming she even has the opportunity to, and I don't even judge the whole society for not having an opportunity to, because like, at that point, it's not doing much for anyone.
Yeah.
I do like that once it was Sadok who injured himself, right?
No, that was Nori's dad.
Oh, it was Nori's dad.
I don't remember his name offhand.
I just wanted to point out that when Nori's dad twisted his ankle and they're worried if he could migrate, I was like, they are the most wheel-focused people of all time. And they haven't thought of putting somebody with a twisted ankle on a cart. Like, I don't know. Just, there's so many, they can carry him. It's...
I imagine he's needed to pull the cart.
Mm-hmm.
And with him out and making the cart heavier, it's going to be somewhat problematic. But
Harwood's going to be brutal.
But you're also right that I feel like there's some communal solution to this.
Yeah. Like
take turns.
If you like the wheel so much, make a wheelchair. I don't know.
Like I said, I agree with you that there's better solutions here, but it's just trying to...
It wouldn't, like, yeah, they seem like a communal society at first, so it's a little bit odd, first of all, that they're, like, asking if, like, the way they phrased, can you migrate, made it feel like they might have to leave him behind. But, like, just, again, like, with how much they go into the wheels, you think, like, wheel-based travel for the injured wouldn't be too far for them to imagine.
I'm interested in seeing your further thoughts develop as we continue to watch this show on this topic. So next we have the Southland story.
This, out of all three, I think was the hardest for me to watch. Maybe.
There's 4 stories.
Oh, okay. This was the second hardest for me to watch, actually, because there's the fourth one where I have one note, and then I left it there. This one, so they has some tension. They start off pretty early on with an elf patrol coming in a bar to ask questions, and somebody told him to let it go, knife ears. I felt like that was pretty. That's like I said, just bad.
Yeah, it's a little racist.
It's like a Tolkien slur. I don't know if does he have those in the books?
I'm trying to remember if there's any between. So the elves cast lots of shade against lots of people.
So the elves have all the mean names.
The elves call the dwarves the Naugrim. And Naugrim translates to stunted people.
Yeah, that's not nice either.
So, like, there's those kind of slurs.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, Arondir's the elf that this was directed at, right? Is that his name? Okay.
Yes, Arondir.
Arondir. So, I feel like the conflict between the humans and the elves in Arondir mirrored Galadriel's conflict in a way.
How so?
So, with Arondir, he's right and he wants to move on past a complicated and sordid history where the elves and the humans didn't get along, and he wants to get along with the men who live there now, right? In Galadriel's case, she wants to hold on to the past, and everyone around her wants to let go and forget about Sauron. They all want to just let that era be done, you know? Mm-hmm. For better or for worse. In Galadriel's case, since she's right, we know for the worse. But generally speaking, that's a positive thing that people move on past, like you know, old hatreds from previous conflicts, right?
Do you think the Southlanders are free from a desire to follow Morgoth?
I automatically was presumed that.
Okay.
We'll keep watching. I feel like they do seem like they would pretty much do anything to get the elves to leave them alone, I will say. And that might lead them to make some questionable choices if that does happen. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that means they want to work with him. If the elves were just gone, they wouldn't have worked with him, I feel like, if that's what happens. But I don't know that's what happens. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, like this whole situation, Arondir kind of like he has like definitely has cop energy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the patrons at the bar don't want to talk. They don't want nothing to him. I didn't understand at first, like, are the humans under the dominions of the elves? Are they subjects to them?
So this is all Rings of Power stuff. There isn't any lore on it. My impression from the show is that the elves have some sort of a occupation, military presence like you do after a war.
Yeah, it's something we don't see very commonly in modern society, but I think you hear about a lot in history is like armies in countries that they're at war with in the civilian populations nearby. and like the civilian population isn't happy about it, and the army just kind of is like the boss for a while. This isn't exactly what's happening, but it's like it's an odd situation, and there's so many lack of modern parallels.
Yeah.
So the elves are being depicted as wrong to discriminate against the ancestor of the people in the village, but the elf that feels that way probably would be more likely to agree with Galadriel to go and find Sauron and traces of Morgoth.
Yeah.
And so again, like it's just like the two halves of these stories feel like when you're watching it, if you're not thinking about it, you don't really they feel like they're just both ramifications of the war, but they rhyme with each other and mirror each other. I feel like
they do.
I think the show writers are trying to send a message about keeping mindful about the horrors of the past. Like Sauron is out there after all, but don't apply that to all aspects of the current situation. And yeah, this is where I say the humans of the village are, if anything, more likely to be predisposed to allying with anyone against the elves because of their elves' poor treatment up to them.
And I think there is something to be said for that.
Arondir, I think, mentions he's been there 79 years. Like that he's been stationed there. That's like a stint, you know. Like to a human, that's multiple generations. Mm-hmm. Like there's that inherent imbalance to.
Yeah. It's a product of the mismatch between the immortality of the elves and the mortality of the humans. While 79 years feels like a long time to us who are mortal, these very elves fought against Morgoth and remember what happened firsthand. Right,
exactly. Like the elves could have been fighting this guy's great-grandfather who was awful. Like I don't skipped over the war, so I don't get why the humans sided with Morgoth originally.
Humans are easily influenced by Morgoth.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being influenced by Morgoth. Even I feel bad for the people in this village a bit.
Yeah, I'm not without sympathy for them.
Mm-hmm. So far,
I'm without sympathy for some, but not the people in the village.
They still have they're calling the elves knives ear and saying, "What is one of them doing here?"
Okay, I have less sympathy for that guy, but
that guy's just a jerk.
But overall, I like depicting the problems of the elves and the humans this way. I like seeing the mismatch between the mortal and the immortal view. Yeah,
I think that is super interesting, and it gets touched on time to time, and I think it's just really ever hammered enough like that. Like if somebody really lived longer than humans, it would be way different. You know, the best relationship we could have with them is like a pet. Dogs, yeah, exactly. Like dogs and humans is the best.
Yeah.
That elves and humans really could have a relationship if you think about it with that thing. But pets and humans have great relationships too at the same time, you know.
Mm-hmm. And so humans and elves can have great relationships, but it's going to be very different. Your relationship with your dog is very different than your relationship with another human.
Yeah, definitely. I need to, as if I didn't make it clear, clarify and write out my thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts. I said some good, some bad. I meant some of the depictions are good and bad, not my thoughts. All of those are good.
Well, maybe we can do a deep dive in an appendix, and I would love to hear a complete analysis of this from you. I'm sure it will be very eye-opening.
Mm-hmm. That was my take on the racial politics of the in-universe stuff. But narratively, there's, stuff is still going on. This is all the dressing. This is all just the setup, really.
Yeah.
There is something weird going on in town, for sure.
Oil milk is not normal.
That was revolting. Absolutely gross.
Yep. I think it was supposed to be.
I don't know. I did a little bit lose the thread here, but I don't want it to be spoiled. But arming up for a conflict, but the elves are also leaving. Is that what exactly is going on?
I don't remember any of the Southerners arming up for a conflict.
No, the daughter of, I don't even remember the character's name, but the woman who's interested in
Bronwyn.
Is her name Bronwyn?
Bronwyn is the woman in blue who's friends with Arondir.
I think they are more than friends.
Yes.
I know that you're bad with romantic cues, but I felt very obvious.
Well, they're also friends.
Yeah, they are also friends. But Arondir's friend, Bronwyn?
Mm-hmm.
Her son he has a sword. He's getting picked on by the other like kids that are human in the village.
He's looking at a sword in another guy's barn.
Oh, that's another guy. I thought that was his barn.
No, that's another guy's barn.
I thought that was like his dad's sword or something.
That's Waldrig's barn.
That's Waldron's barn. Okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It means the show didn't make it clear to you.
Well, I mean, they probably had a short conversation about it too that I missed, but...
Understandable. That happens to me too.
Yeah. He finds the broken sword. I liked that it was not only had Sauron's symbol on it, but is actually shaped like Sauron's symbol.
Yeah.
So there was a point, and I don't remember what issues, but the elves' absence caused things to happen, bad things to happen. Do you remember what that was specifically?
No.
No, their absence suddenly caused like the power vacuum. I remember they're all reacting to it. They're all in the bar trying to figure out what happened, what to do about this. But whatever this was, I don't remember exactly.
There's signs that orcs are starting to tunnel and stuff like that, but I don't think that that's directly because of the elves' absence. I think it's more coincidental.
I got the idea that the orcs were coming because the elves left. That's the idea I got from.
I didn't get that, but maybe I missed it.
Yeah. I felt like with the relationships that the humans, like I feel like the humans don't need the elves, and I felt like the writers made it feel like they did need the elves after all, was what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like kind of like paternalistic attitudes towards these
Southerners, yeah.
Yeah. When Theo lost it, Theo's the son of her, right?
Theo is Bronwyn's son.
Theo losing it at the mice under the floor before that we revealed what they really were, and going crazy at the floorboards reminded me of Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe.
I haven't read that.
It's short. It's very short if you ever are in the mood to read something for like 20 minutes.
Interesting. I'll keep it in mind.
And it's like one of the first examples of an unreliable narrator. I love it. It's really good. I won't go too much into it.
Interesting.
I like the once it's a single orc and how like dangerous just the single orc is, because you see like legions of them being a threat and getting mowed down eventually, but like just one menacing like a group of humans I liked that a lot.
I like this too because this story is taking place in the Second Age,
mm-hmm.
where everything is bigger, better, stronger, before it declined in the Third Age.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree. I think this was a great choice. Loved it.
Okay. And so that is basically everything that happened in the Southlands.
That's everything that happened in the Southlands. We have the Khazad-dûm storyline.
I don't understand what Elrond and the guy want or were doing with the dwarves at all.
Okay.
I don't understand why they're there. I followed along, like, kind of that they were asking for something, and first they had to even get in there to ask, and then, you know what, why don't you go through your notes, maybe I'll be able to piece it together.
Celebrimbor says he needs a forge made by spring.
Okay, I missed that, too.
So Celebrimbor is the guy with Elrond.
Okay.
And he's a master craftsman.
Okay.
Now, why an elf has such a quick deadline is never made clear to me either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the dwarves are supposed to help him achieve that goal.
Like, I feel like if you phrased it like forge made by spring, I feel like that almost feels like just a turn of phrase for something done. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I didn't catch that he literally so he needs a literal forge made.
He needs a big forge made so he can make some of his biggest, most impressive plans to craft yet.
Isn't he like, is Celebrimbor, and I thought Elrond was sent to him because he's a writer. He's an apprentice to him. No?
So
apparently not if he needs a forge.
Gil-galad is the king who is in Lindon.
Yes.
And that's the one that Elrond speech writes for.
Right, yes.
Celebrimbor is a master craftsman who wants the forge built by spring.
Okay.
And
the king introduces Elrond to Celebrimbor, though.
Yes.
To what end? Is that ever explained? Or just because we needed Elrond around? Or just because...
I don't remember specifically, but it may have been something like help Celebrimbor solve his problems.
Okay, all right. That's still questionable to me, but I'm happy that there is a stated reason that all of this is happening. I'm sorry to go so off. I'm not even trying to be critical. I am mostly just genuinely confused.
And that's great feedback. No, it's great feedback. It means that the show is not explaining itself perhaps as well as it should.
Yeah.
But if you're coming at this knowing all of the lore,
right.
sometimes you can fill those in.
It will be very helpful, right? Yes.
Sometimes, because, sometimes Celebrimbor says he needs a forge made by spring, and there's absolutely no good lore reason to think why he needs a forge built by spring.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So there's things that I don't understand about this explanation either.
Well, at least you're worried about why, and I'm worried about what.
Yeah.
I feel I'd rather be thinking about why than what. I never like watching a show and thinking, what is happening?
The fact that we're both left with questions, though, is probably not coincidental.
No. Yeah.
I had some notes about the Khazad-dûm storyline overall, though.
Okay.
I thought the dialogue ripped me out of the secondary belief in the world when Celebrimbor made an analogy to caring for an aged parent, because this seems a really odd analogy for an immortal elf to describe how dwarves mine.
Yeah. No, because I know exactly why, because elves don't have aged parents.
Exactly. So why is Celebrimbor talking about something he has no experience with?
With our last discussion, it would have been a lot more interesting if they said like a cared companion or friend, because they could be companions or friends with a human, and it'd kind of be like us saying like they're taking care of it like you take care of an old dog.
Yeah.
I think that would have been better.
I think that would have been a really good way to do it too. Yeah, just have a platonic friendship between an elf and someone who's really old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That would have been really nice. That's a great idea.
Because elves probably are way used to like taking care of old things.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to feel like, humans age in the blink of an eye or something, let alone if they have a dog or something with a shorter lifespan than us,
Yeah. No, I think that'd be really cool for an adaptation to explore at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So the expanse of Khazad-dûm is absolutely breathtaking, and the music gets some really good quality time here.
Yes, I will say I liked a lot about Khazad-dûm. I was just still, like I said, confused why, but it looked cool. I liked a lot of the visuals, the music, like you said. I agree.
So after Elrond gets inside Khazad-dûm, he has this rite of Sigyn Tarag that is entirely made up for the show.
Okay.
And the show says that Aule himself has fashioned this rite.
Okay.
The dwarves do a lot of talking about Aule, so we need to establish now that Aule is one of the Valar. He is one of the gods who helps govern the world.
Okay.
He's the god who is a smith himself, and he made the dwarves. There's an entire myth about how he made the dwarves. I say myth, but it's, a true myth.
Yeah.
Now, I don't understand why Aule, god of smiths and creator of dwarves, makes a rite of Sigyn Tarag. Maybe I just don't understand Aule's mind, but it seems overly involved for him, I feel like.
Yeah, do you think somebody inspired by Aule just said that he taught him how to do it when they really came up with it on their own? Do you think he indirectly made it, maybe?
Like inspired by Aule?
Yeah, like a big Aule fan.
I would say, but then it's not fashioned by Aule himself.
No, it's technically not.
And I think that's what...
It was divinely inspired?
I think what Prince Durin says is that this was fashioned by Aule himself.
Yeah, that's
and it feels just overly involved to me for Aule.
Maybe it was that with an exaggeration, with a myth over time, the information degraded, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know much about Aule, but he doesn't seem to be he seems like he has a lot to do to be worried about coming up with entrance rituals to your mind, to be personally.
Yeah, I mean, he's involved with his dwarves, but I feel like that's a little bit over involved.
Yeah, I agree with your point.
Elrond takes the hammer breaking as a sign to admit defeat in the competition, and I thought that was a good moment to illustrate what kind of a guy Elrond is, that he looks at what's happening and interprets things as, like, my hammer broke by chance, I need to stop.
Yeah, whereas somebody else might say, I didn't lose, the hammer did.
Yeah, exactly. And
try to
keep on hammering.
Out. Yeah.
So I did like that little note in Elrond's character here. I also really liked Durin's speech addressing the mortal perspective from the elven perspective on life. Like, Elrond's been gone 20 years and Durin's lived a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I really liked how the story brought that to the forefront. It's dwarven mortality instead of human mortality, but it's still mortality. And Durin's brilliant speech here is some of the most human that the show has.
Longevity of lifetime is such an interesting concept to play around with.
Yeah.
And the elves are impossible. They don't die of old age or disease at all.
Right.
Like, if they stay home, they're set. They're immortal at that point. They can only be killed by somebody else doing it, or a force of nature or something like that.
They can be killed by weapons, wounds, they're not, I was going to say, they're not immune to fall damage. They can waste away from grief, but they're not going to die of illness or old age.
Yeah. And they can't just swim across entire expanses of sea.
No. I do kind of wish that the consequences for losing the Sigyn Tarad for Elrond were enforced.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be banished from all dwarven lands, but then he was invited right back for dinner.
Yeah, that would have been a bit funnier. I think it is just trying to characterize the dwarves as being like tongue-in-cheek and like, what the hell? Or whatever, you know.
But when you have a rite of Sigyn Tarag fashioned by Aule himself, should you be just casting that aside?
You have a hobbit, or you don't have the dwarven mindset. they just don't care. That's probably why they invoke Aule, and it's just completely made up. They're probably lying through their teeth as a joke or something.
Well, something I would believe that Aule taught them would be how to sing to the mountain.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was an amazing scene.
I would absolutely believe that Aule himself taught the dwarves how to sing to the mountain.
Yes.
I loved every moment of this scene. It fits so well that the dwarves would use singing to create their own kind of dwarvish magic to be one with the mountain.
I've hit right on, I feel like a lot of important themes that we've been covering, you know.
Well, that does it for our rings. Now let's do our things.
First up is Wizard Wisdom.
Yeah. What quotes did you like?
I, in the prologue, loved the line, "Now we learned many words for death."
That's a good one.
I would have liked it even if it was, "Now we have learned a word for death," or something like that. We've learned a word for death, but many words just really seasons the dialogue in such a way that I love.
It's a good quote. I feel like dialogue is one of the poorest aspects in Rings of Power, but there are still some good quotes that shine through.
Yeah.
One that I really liked was when Elrond says, "Go, and I promise you, if but a whisper of a rumor of the threat you perceive proves true, I will not rest until it is put right."
Yeah, when he said that, I felt like he was, and I know maybe you weren't supposed to interpret it this way, I just didn't feel reassured by that personally. It felt like he was being, reassuring, or condescending in a way.
So, condescending is an interesting word to use. Condescending in its medieval sense is not a bad thing.
Okay.
And sometimes this comes up in Lord of the Rings because of its ties to medievalness. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it applies here in Rings of Power, but since you mentioned the word condescending, let's go on a little sidetrack.
Yeah.
Condescension, properly in its medieval sense, means someone who is of higher rank being humble enough to join someone of lower rank in his society in some way. It would be like if the president went to McDonald's with you.
Huh, okay.
That would be an act of condescension.
That makes a lot of sense with how the descension part of condescension, the going down.
To descend with.
Yeah. Yeah.
But condescension was considered a good thing because it was seen as a sign of humility from the person who was considered higher or more esteemed.
This would be a good example of medieval condescension would be Aragorn's "You bow to no one, friends." in a way.
So
It feels like it's in the same vein if it's not the same thing.
There's some similarities. I think that Aragorn would probably have taken their bows
As condescension.
Well, I mean, Aragorn definitely does condescend in positive ways to the hobbits, because Aragorn is a humble ruler. But it's also that the hobbits would be humble enough to bow to Aragorn at his coronation.
Yeah.
Like, at a feast about the hobbits, they bow to no one. At Aragorn's coronation, they're going to bow to Aragorn.
Yeah. Yeah, but Aragorn objects to it, right?
No, but in the book, these are two separate events.
Oh,
the event
okay,
about the hobbits and the event of Aragorn's coronation are two separate things.
Okay, got it.
So I could totally see this happening at an event to celebrate the destruction of the ring and honor the ring bearer and his faithful servant.
Right.
But the hobbits would also be humble enough to bow to Aragorn when he's being crowned king.
Yeah, well, I assume condescension wasn't ever a permanent thing. It's just, I'm on your level for a minute, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frodo is pretty good at condescension in the books because he's usually coming down to Sam's level.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot smaller, I feel like, between the king and the hobbits. Like, Frodo's still landed gentry, and Sam's under his employ, so technically master servant. But I feel like it's a direct one-to-one, you know?
Yeah.
It's not like the president having McDonald's with me. It's like my boss having lunch with me more. I am very intrigued with this, and will carry it forward with me.
The next quote I liked was when Arondir says that there are healers among the elves, but we call them artificers. Most wounds to our bodies heal of their own accord, so it is their labor instead to render hidden truths as works of beauty, for beauty has great power to heal the soul.
Yeah, that one I didn't follow very well. Did you want to? Can you break it down for me?
Sure, I can try. Basically, elves are super healers.
Mm-hmm.
And what Arondir is saying here, so it's Rings of Power establishing, not directly from the lore, that healers among the elves tend to be more concerned with wounds to their spirits or their minds than wounds to their bodies. The bodies heal on their own pretty well. They don't really need physical doctors, but they need shrinks. They need therapists.
Oh, got it.
I mean, just to put these in crude terms, like, it's more than this. But, they need treatment for their mental illnesses. But these artificers, instead of being,
for beauty. Oh, okay.
Instead of them being therapists or doctors, instead of prescribing medicines and therapies, they're artists.
I see. Okay, so because I get it now, I think I got it initially, and I just now when we were discussing it, mixed something up about their labors go to render hidden truths. I thought they meant more like sculptures and physical renderings of beauty.
Well, that would be one way to do it. I'm sure some of these artificers are sculptors, but they could also be writers or musicians or any form.
Just general artists. Yeah. Okay. So, and then that means, so this is implying elves hold artists to the same level of reverence we hold doctors because of the physiological differences and societal differences.
And the fact that art is medicine to an elf.
Well, to humans too, but we have to worry about real medicine more often than elves do.
Yes. And I like what you said there, that art is medicine to us too.
If we healed as easily as elves, then we'd probably do the same thing,
Yeah. And the idea that beauty has great power to heal the soul, like you said, is true for humans too. And
yeah, so that's why it's a good quote.
So this is a good quote. My last quote is from Gil-galad, where he says, "For the same wind that seeks to blow out a fire may also cause its spread."
There's a very close poetry. Is it Walt Whitman? I don't remember. I don't remember the exact lines either, so I can't look it up real quick. But there is a very famous poem that says something about a small flame is diminished by wind, but a large flame is grown by it. So too is love and passion, something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it definitely reminiscent of that. I will maybe try to find it later, but I'll probably that one will probably get put on the back burner.
Cool.
This is what from the work. I feel like Arondir sums up my comparison between the two storylines between Galadriel and his story, but he says the past is here whether we like it or not. No, Arondir doesn't say it. His friend does, right? His coworker.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
I
his
think it's
coworker says, the past is here whether we like it or not. Aaron Deere wouldn't have said that. God, the other elf he is stationed with, I don't even know if they're friends, really. But his, fellow soldier... Colleague mentions this to him, and I feel like it, again, this guy, when I was watching this scene, and again, I like that the show is kind of doing this. It gives me some cognitive dissonance, because I disagree with everything he's saying, but when I apply it to the other half of the story, it makes sense and works. And, I don't know. Maybe I'll see it apply on both ends and work, but I like that for the time being.
Mm-hmm. When we get a complete show, it'll be much easier to do complete analysis.
That's true. But
in the meantime, we have a question that needs answering. Good tidings, fellow hobbits. I have a question for you. The podcast touched on music in Middle-earth in Episode 1, and most recently in Episode 8 with the new segment, which I really like and hope that you touch on more in the future when we get to some of the other texts and works. As a fantasy music nerd, I am curious if there are any themes or pieces of music from other movies, shows, or video games, or even historically, that either of you feel fit the theme and feel of Middle-earth. Signed, Bogwise Butterfingers, Hobbit, Philosopher of Second Breakfast. So, JD, what are some of the songs you have for Mr. Bogwise Butterfingers?
So I actually thought about it, wrote down a few different ones, revised, edited, took out some that didn't work. I thought about this. I did my homework. I feel like still this list is limited. I could have expounded more or refined it better or thought of more stuff if I had sat with it more, because the music is such a big thing, but that's something I probably could work on for the rest of my life. So here we are. The first thing that came to my mind is, this is historical, but I found it, I've heard it first through the children's show Bluey, is Gustav Holst's The Planets. They have a whole episode that is based off pieces from this work. They're well known, so I'm a little sad to say I heard it first through Bluey, because most music nerds probably, especially soundtrack nerds, know this is the inspiration for a lot of different movies. If you listen through, it feels like you're listening to 8 different soundtracks mushed together. If you listen to the whole the whole piece, the whole symphony,
something like that.
Yeah. The specific thing that I feel like fits Lord of the Rings is the motif in Jupiter. It's used in the episode from the children's show I've watched. It creates an awe-inspiring atmosphere, that is hopeful and powerful at the same time. I feel like that specific motif in that part of this song really fits Lord of the Rings well.
I completely agree. When I looked up the song based on this, I found I knew the Jupiter theme, but I didn't know that it was Gustav Holst's The Planets, and I didn't know that it was in Bluey. I just knew it, but when I went to go listen to it, I was familiar with the piece.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. It sounds very hopeful and powerful. It's a great piece to talk about.
Yeah, there are other pieces throughout The Planets that also would fit Lord of the Rings, but that is the one I can point to and say this exactly is fits perfectly for a few different scenes.
Mars fits Star Wars.
Yeah. They use the planets to stand in for the soundtrack for Star Wars until they had the themes made. Yeah, it was very heavily inspired to Star Wars a lot. Speaking of which, I feel like the Space Odyssey theme, also Sprach Zathura, definitely...
Also spake Zarathustra.
Yes, it's German. Also spake Zastrusa?
It's thus spoke Zarathustra.
It's just, for me, easy to put into any epic film with a journey. It could be a good finale or intro song. I like the trumpet fanfare with the ominous drums. Reminds me of the whole, ring and its creation and destruction. I don't know if this one's an odd take, but the instrumental version of Sally's song from Nightmare Before Christmas, that just sounds like not the lyrics don't fit, but the instrumentation has a magic charm to it. Mm-hmm. That I can't put my finger on.
A little more whimsical.
Yeah, it's very whimsical. The next few of these feel like they're in the same category. these are more I kind of broadly, the first two were kind of bigger picture. This one didn't fit anywhere else, the Sally song. The rest of these are more like the bread and butter during the fights between the orcs and the Rohirrim and stuff. But Woodkid Iron has kind of like a more like wooden drum beat with vocals. It kind of has some more of the trumpets and stuff, but it feels like all of these next few feel Anglo-Saxon to me is all I could say.
Gotcha.
Or are inspired by Anglo-Saxon directly.
Yeah.
Or I suspect it, one or the other. But this Woodkid Iron feels good. Just any Elder Scrolls I have here as well fits this. Mm-hmm. European folk songs, obviously.
Skald is a band I'm familiar with.
Mm-hmm. I have a few I listen to for various reasons. I have playlists that I use to get in certain moods. Skald isn't something I'd listen to just driving around, though. Honestly,
yeah.
But I am familiar with them, and I like them for if I'm trying to hype myself up. It's very good. Mm-hmm. I will also say the Studio Ghibli soundtrack kind of fits the more idyllic scenes too. Studio Ghibli is impressionist, so people who are impressionist composers like Debussy, that is maybe the Shire or the brighter sides of Middle Earth, you know. Mm-hmm. I do feel like the Halo theme is nice. It has a choir, which is, I mean, as we've seen in just this episode, feels, first of all, even without the dwarves singing kind of choirish music, it invokes mysticism. And then there's like hard instruments, drums, guitars, stuff like that. I felt like it would definitely fit pretty well somewhere in there.
Specifically, the Halo theme is Gregorian chant.
Yes, it is Gregorian chanting, yep. Which there isn't specific Gregorian chants in Lord of the Rings that I know of.
No.
The closest is the dwarves singing kind of sound.
Well, Gregorian chant is specifically medieval Catholic music.
Yeah, and this is an inherently Catholic work, as the author has said.
But it's a fundamentally Catholic work, but it's not... It's pre-Christian. There is no Gregorian chant because there's no Pope Gregory, because there's no Mass.
No. But there is still chanting.
Yeah.
There's stuff that I feel like is similar to Gregorian chant. I feel like the dwarves' musical style always is in a similar... I wish I knew more about music to have the vocabulary, but it just sounds similar to me, is all I could say.
Oh, no, I definitely see where you're coming from on it. I wasn't meaning to argue against it. I was just...
There's just a lot of baggage
when you said it was fundamentally Catholic, I wanted to clarify that this does not mean that there is literal Gregorian chant in Middle-earth.
No, not yet. I feel like I kind of jumped around my notes. I hit all the ones I really wanted to hit on.
Okay. I might have a bit of a disappointing answer at the beginning here, which is that while Middle-earth encompasses a lot, and there's a lot of different kinds of music, because there's so many themes and feels in Middle-earth, I generally do not like to mix and match intellectual properties, so to speak.
Right.
So, like you mentioned, the Skyrim music, which is absolutely awesome. I love the Skyrim music, but it's Skyrim. When I hear Skyrim music, I'm going to be transported to my experience playing Skyrim, which is fundamentally not Middle-earth to me. Yeah. And that's something I can't really get over. Skyrim music will never sound like Lord of the Rings music because it's not Lord of the Rings music, which is unfortunately a disappointing answer.
It's really hard to do that in it's impossible to completely disentangle, but I should say, disentangle enough to imagine what Skyrim music would sound like if I haven't played Skyrim. It's hard, and I could see why one couldn't do it at all.
I don't think I'm particularly gifted in this regard.
Yeah, I'm not great at it either, but I tried my best to.
Well, my selections don't stem from music written for other forms of media. I tend to fall into the more historical aspect of the question.
Yeah, I try to do a fair mix of both, but
well, hopefully I have some interesting recommendations here. First, I think that Irish drinking songs are very hobbity.
Yes.
When I'm listening to drinking music, tavern music, it strikes a hobbity chord in me. I feel extra hobbity doing that.
Yes. Drinking songs in general, just perfect for Hobbit, but also just underrated in general too, I want to say.
Yeah. Well, the dwarves have their own feel, different than the hobbits. Mm-hmm. I think a band called Windrose has a marvelous dwarven feel. Mm. In general, for what feels Middle-earthy, I would recommend Moonsong by Adrian von Ziegler. One of the themes of the creation music is described in the Silmarillion as being slow and blended with immeasurable sorrow, from which its beauty chiefly came. And I feel like this song kind of strikes a little bit at that chord.
This one I also liked your example from the text. Like, it's not exactly ever really possible to describe how a song sounds perfectly through text.
Yeah.
Unless you know a lot about music words, but this really does match up with that description that you picked. I really thought, like, wow, it's like spot on.
Yeah. One way to guarantee that a song will feel like Middle-earth to me is to use lyrics from a poem in the books.
Yeah, that does feel like cheating, though.
Yeah, well, I'm going to talk about one a little bit. Rachel Hardy and Timothy Shortell do a marvelous version of Galadriel's Song of Eldamar. This song just feels very elvish to me. The thing that makes it on this list is that the words might come from the book, but the melody is their own. It's their own music. I think they've done a really good job writing their own music to this poem.
Yeah, it was touching.
I'm glad you liked it. Philip Menzies is a composer who makes music inspired by the Silmarillion. These songs are explicitly crafted to effectively contain the themes of the story in the very music itself, a goal that I think is itself very true to the themes of the story. Mm-hmm. For example, when I was making the script to episode 11 on our animated movies, I turned on his music while I was script writing, and it was just playing a playlist in the background, but I found one song that just disrupted my flow of writing. Mm-hmm. In the Silmarillion, Melkor's contribution to the music is described as loud and vain and endlessly repeated, and it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison as of many trumpets braying upon a few notes. The song that interrupted my script writing, when I went to go look at it, was called Melkor's Pride. Not only does Philip Menzies accurately depict the description of the song as given in the book, but the way he executed that description served to disrupt my ability to create, which I find very fitting given the inability of evil to create.
Yeah.
This is the kind of brilliance that goes into his music writing. There's no lyrics or anything usually. It's just instrumental themes to various characters and situations in the Silmarillion.
Yeah. Yeah, when I read your description, I had clicked on them, read some, and then kept listening. And I had clicked on Melkor's Pride first before I had gotten to the part where you were describing it. And I also didn't get what you meant at all, how this was Middle-earth. Like, I was just doing a quick listen through on your links before I finished reading. And then I read through it, and I was like, oh, okay, so that is why. That is why that one, it seems like more out of place.
Well, I had hobbits, I had dwarves, I had Middle-earth in general, I had elves. I had to come up with something to represent evil in the world.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So this was my discourse on evil music for Middle-earth. This is what evil music sounds like to me.
Yeah, definitely.
And all of the songs that we have mentioned will be linked in the description below. So, our dear listener wanted more magical melodies. So as a gift to you, here's a magical melody. Today we're going to talk about the poem that Tolkien wrote called Mythopoeia. It'll be linked in the description. This is a poem that Tolkien wrote for his friend C.S. Lewis, who called myths lies and therefore worthless, even though they might be breathed through silver.
That is basically, if you say that to Tolkien, like spitting in his face.
Yeah. Well, Tolkien eventually persuaded Lewis about the value of mythology.
Yeah. I still say he took it very personally. I'm surprised he even still talked to him after reading this poem.
I mean, Tolkien also converted C.S. Lewis. Lewis was originally an atheist, and Tolkien was trying to convince him to become Catholic, but Lewis ended up becoming Anglican instead.
Oh, so this is somewhere along that journey then, I feel like.
Yeah.
Those themes I didn't pick up on, but now it makes sense.
Yeah. I see in this poem a description of the disenchanted view of the world, a description of science and materialism, followed by a description of an enchanted world, one where mythology imbues meaning into existence. I also noted that the alliteration isn't consistent enough for me to find a pattern easily in this, but this poem is surprisingly, or maybe perhaps unsurprisingly, alliterative.
Yes. Yeah, there was more like alliterative phrases, but no pattern.
Yeah. But the alliteration was nice when I went through and read it this time. It's been a minute since I read this poem. When you read it, did you notice anything?
I thought that it was quite touching. The parts where that you just mentioned about the description of materialism, I kind of flew right past me. It didn't hit much, but like the part where he describes I feel like what he was getting at was subjectivity is so important in creation, and it really, I thought, was very beautiful in that. Like, your own subjective experience is very important on what you call things. I have some parts I set aside about that, but I thought that was interesting, and it goes to show, like, different perspectives will have a different view and create different things. I feel like that was a big theme that he was getting at in this poem.
Yeah, he definitely emphasizes man as namer. That's a medieval Catholic idea in the line, "Yet trees are not trees until so named and seen." The emphasis on man as namer is some of what you were picking up on there.
Yeah, well, more your next point here, the most quoted excerpt I just seen, that was the part where I thought, where he's talking about man through whom is splintered from a single white to many hues. Yeah. I felt like that was about kind of like, you know, if you refract white light, what it made me think of is like if you put white light through different minerals with different imperfections, it creates different colors, you know?
Right.
If it's a clear white, you get a prism that makes a rainbow, but there's other things too. And I feel like he was hitting on that maybe. Maybe that was some of my own personal experience thing, but the refracted light, and then also if you combine that with like, each of us have different experiences, different chips, different imperfections, that will refract light differently. We each create our own story from that, though, you know? I feel like that was kind of his intent with that line. I highlighted that before I had seen you said that was one of the most quoted excerpts from this poem. Yeah,
well, I guess that goes to show it's a powerful excerpt.
It's good. I liked it. I did connect it with the beginning of that kind of paragraph where I felt like the heart of man is not compound of lies, but draws some wisdom from the only wise. I feel like that connects well with the splintered white part. Also, this poem has a lot more rhyming than alliterative, too, I will say.
It's definitely a rhyming poem.
It's a rhyming poem, for sure.
Yeah, the most quoted excerpt from the poem goes, "Man, sub-creator, the refracted light, through who is splintered from a single white, to many hues and endlessly combined, in living shapes that move from mind to mind. Though all the crannies of the world we filled, with elves and goblins, though we dared to build gods and their houses out of dark and light, and sow the seed of dragons, 'twas our right, used or misused, the right has not decayed, we make still by the law in which we're made." Tolkien invokes his concept of subcreation and subcreator in this, and what I got out of this was that just as God, the creator, made us, Tolkien says, so we also try to subcreate, and this subcreation is mythology, full of elves and goblins, gods and dragons. Just as humans have made myths in the past, so our right to make myths remains.
Yeah, well, and I think he's kind of saying, like, a function of this, like, you know, it starts off with him talking about us naming trees. Trees were trees before they were trees, but the concept of a tree, even though there are material trees, is something like, you know, I could say a tree and you have a picture in your mind now, and there's nothing other than language which is directly related with like this myth making that he's talking about, you know, like I felt like he was comparing like making those myths and understanding of the worlds to the same way that we use language generally also. So like we make elves and goblins to communicate concepts of ideas that are, I mean, he didn't love metaphor, but maybe not strictly metaphor, but like to communicate the idea of good and evil,
He didn't like allegory, but application is definitely...
Application and metaphor are fine. Allegory is no good. Right. Allegory does all the hand-holding for you, where,
It's the purpose domination of the reader.
Yeah. So like, these are kind of like we have elves and demons because, trees are kind of more material. We can point to one and all get a very base understanding of a tree, where like evil, we need our own myths to create that. And I feel like that's what Tolkien's expressing through this. So we have demons, or what was the poem saying?
Elves and goblins, gods and dragons.
Yeah. So all these different terms for stuff that we don't physically see to describe these higher concepts that are, to Tolkien, very real, to me very real as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what this poem was getting at, and it did a great job of like wholly defending this, which is good. I feel like that doesn't get enough people supporting goblins. We need more goblin defenders.
Well, I really liked your analysis of this passage. Another one of my favorite passages is, "Blessed are the timid hearts that evil hate, that quail in its shadow and yet shut the gate, that seek no parley and in guarded room, though small and bare, upon a clumsy loom, weave tissues gilded by the far-off day, hope and believed under shadow's sway. Those woven tissues are the stuff of myth, stories that inspire us even when evil is close."
Mm-hmm.
And it's really those first two lines that get me. Blessed are the timid hearts that evil hate, that quail in its shadow and yet shut the gate.
Yeah, and that theme carries throughout his works a lot.
It makes me think of hobbits.
Yeah.
The poor little hobbit who shuts his door right in front of the ringwraith's nose.
Mm-hmm.
Little hobbity things. And the hobbits are the ones preserving the stories, handing them down to us.
Mm-hmm.
They're weaving those myths that are then hoped and believed when things get rough.
Right, yeah.
We can also see Tolkien's skepticism of progress, especially in the verse that goes, "I will not walk with your progressive apes, erect and sapient. Before them gapes the dark abyss to which their progress tends, if by God's mercy progress ever ends, and does not ceasingly revolve the same unfruitful course with changing of a name." It just seemed a apt time to point out how much Tolkien hated progress.
Yes. I'm trying to understand the last half of that better, because the first half I get exactly the same. Hold on.
I think it's saying that evil is the same story over again. It's just changes names and it doesn't change its substance.
Yeah. Okay.
Because remember, we talked about how evil doesn't actually exist. Evil is just the absence of good. There's only one way to be evil, remember?
And it's by not being good.
And that's by not being good. It's the absence of good. Mm-hmm. So what Tolkien is saying here anyway is that progress is evil. What he means by progress anyway. And if by God's mercy progress ever ends and does not ceaselessly revolve the same unfruitful course with changing of a name. So
I get it. Yeah. Okay.
Evil comes in a different guise every few hundred years, but it tends to the same destructive course is what he's saying.
Got it.
And he's saying that this time around it's calling itself progress.
Yes.
And another favorite line of mine is, "I bow not yet before the iron crown, nor cast my own small golden scepter down." Morgoth had an iron crown. So this line stands out to me as the most related to Tolkien's own mythology.
Yeah.
It makes me think of not bowing to Morgoth, nor throwing away the sign of one's own sovereignty.
I wonder, so before this was, did this come out before or after he was writing his notes in the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit? Where would this be on this timeline?
This would be before he published Lord of the Rings, and he never published the Silmarillion. That was something that was published post-mortem.
And that wasn't really a book. That was a collection of his writings, yes.
He had been working on those myths, on the roots of those myths, since like the 19-teens.
Yeah. I just wonder, so in the Iron Crown was something that he knew. I'm assuming this poem that he sent, I don't know if this was just published alongside or if it was, he knew other people would be reading it, but I wonder what he thought people who didn't know about his works would interpret the Iron Crown as, or what it would be if you didn't know about Morgoth.
C.S. Lewis knew about Morgoth.
Oh, okay. Well, then the attendance audience would have gotten the implication then.
Yes.
There we go.
You can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram through the links in the description. Please follow, like, and subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other major podcast platforms. To have your question or comment featured on the podcast, please send an email to shirepost.ringsandthings@gmail.com.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider contributing to our efforts through the Patreon link in the description.
A hearty hobbity thank you to our first supporter, Lori J. from Florida. We are deeply grateful for your support.
And a special thank you to our editor and spiritual producer, Stephen Jeffrey. And thank you for listening.